Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Weeknights. I am JD, aka He Who Pods, glasses on, so also rear view mirror.
I'm Dash, aka Dashing D, aka the real king of R&B.
Oof, they're not gonna like that today,
Well,
but they're probably not gonna like a lot of things today.
right.
Yeah.
Listen, people been stepping in it lately.
Yep.
People have been, whenever we're in an election year, things are weird.
Yep.
Things are weird. Things go haywire. Like, people you don't want to hear from, you start hearing from.
You'd be like, "Where were you?
Right. Where you been at?
Oh, you was here this whole time?"
And then you're reminded in those moments that you don't need those people to speak. Like, there's a reason they weren't around before. I just, our celebrities have the unfortunate reality of dealing with politics on a very public level. Some of them handle it pretty gracefully, they decline to answer. They say things like that, like, at the end of the day gotta end.
At the
Some of
end
them
of the
do that.
day, the day gotta end.
You have some people who will just simply decline to answer, not even give you any fun little witty quote.
Right.
You have the people who won't say anything at all. You have the people who make their stance very clear, which side of the fence they play on, if any at all.
Right.
Um, you have the people who will out and out endorse the presidential candidates. Will show up at the DNC. Will whatever the case is. And then you have those people somewhere in the middle,
Somewhere.
somewhere in between, where they just get caught up in some stuff that you're like, it's cringy. One, sometimes it's because you find out who they really are.
Right.
Sometimes it has nothing to do with that. Sometimes it's just like, well, why did you even get involved in?
Right.
Sometimes it's lack of media training, I think. Like, just not knowing when to shut up.
Okay.
I don't know what happened here. So we're going to get into it. But we're going to start with Janet because, Miss Jackson, if you're nasty. Because
And this is nasty.
now Janet Jackson was recently interviewed by The Guardian.
Yep.
Very long interview, couldn't even make it through the whole thing, but it's a very long interview. Totally check it out. No disrespect to the person who wrote it. It's just that I didn't have time to read the whole thing. It has nothing to do with the quality of the interview at all. I really don't know because I didn't go through the whole thing. She talks about the Rhythm Nation album and how, it made a difference in kids and teenagers' lives and whatever. And then that kind of segues into um, them talking about the fact that song, she sang about joining voices in protest to social injustice
Right.
and pushing toward a world rid of color lines. And so the interviewer says, I wonder where she stands on the forthcoming election. After all, I say America could be on the verge of voting in its first Black female president, Kamala Harris. And Janet replies, well, you know what they supposedly said? She asked me, she's not Black. That's what I heard. That she's Indian. She looks at me expectantly, perhaps assuming that I have Indian heritage. I didn't even read that part before. This is all bad. This is not good. First, the interviewer, and I will find the interviewer's name. I don't want to be disrespectful. The interviewer says, well, she's both. And she says, her father's white. That's what I was told. I mean, I haven't watched the news in a few days. Says she coughs. I was told that they discovered her father was white. Who is they, Janet? Who is they? So the interviewer says, I'm floored at this point. It's well known that Harris's father is a Jamaican economist, a Stanford professor who split from her Indian mother when she was 5. My mother understood very well that she was raising 2 black daughters, Harris wrote in her book, The Truths We Hold. The people who are most The people who are most vocal in questioning the facts of Harris's identity tend to be hardcore QAnon adjacent, Trump loving conspiracy theorists. I don't think Janet Jackson falls into that camp, but I do wonder what the algorithms are serving her. I start again. And Harris has dual heritage, I say. And given this moment, does Jackson think America is ready for her if we agree she's she's black or okay, a woman of color? And Janet responds, I don't know. Honestly, I don't want to answer that because I really truthfully don't know. I think either way it goes, it's going to be mayhem. She's asked, you don't think there will be a peaceful transition of power? And she says, I think there might be mayhem. Either way it goes, but we'll have to see. So I'm gonna stop there because I think that's the I think that's the meat and the potato and the meat and potatoes of the thing.
Right. That's what everyone's going crazy over.
Janet, Janet, if you Janet, the way to start that conversation was, I don't want to talk about this because I don't know.
That's one way.
Like the like like the thing that you said at the end of the thing was the thing you should have said first. Not really outside of my wheelhouse. I'm a singer. I mean, I'm a lot of things. I'm a mother. I'm so many things, but a political pundit is not one of them. And I would rather not speak about this. Because Janet Jackson, who has been a celebrity most of her life,
Yeah, that's
most,
true.
most, like since she was a wee little girl, she's been famous.
Yep.
Jenny, you didn't notice you should have just not said anything? Just, you don't know whether that lady is black or not? Okay, Jenny.
So the internet is speculating that perhaps Janet Jackson is simply supporting, in her own way, the person that her family has been tied to for decades, Donald Trump. Um, I will respond to that part. I don't think that this is her saying, I support Donald. Um,
Yeah.
I think that if Janet Jackson wanted to say she supported someone, if Janet Jackson wanted to endorse someone, she just would do so. Um, I hear what she's saying when she says, I think either way it's going to be mayhem. I think a lot of people feel like that at the moment. Um, but this thing of like, she's not black, I think it's really interesting, number one, that is, Hmm. that that's the hill people want to die on. I think people have forgotten that policy is what matters in this country, not whether you're black, white, green, yellow, purple, Martian, Asian, Jamaican, Indian, etc. Um, I think it's really interesting that that's the thing that people are focusing on. Um, I think it's sad that this country has taught people to focus on personality, not policy, because policy is really what matters. Not if Obama kills flies on 60 Minutes during an interview. Um, Not if Trump is orange or not. Not if Trump has a hairpiece or not. Not if Obama is black or not. Um, Not if Kamala is Indian or black.
Or both.
And so, I'm sorry.
I said, or both.
Right. And so I think that if we focus more on policy, we'll be in a better place in this country. And I think that's the thing that people should focus on, whether they're celebrities or not. Janet Jackson does seem a bit out of touch with this comment, but I think it also leads to a larger conversation that we won't have here, but a larger conversation about what the average Joe deems to be black or not black. Because there are people who feel everyone of color is black, but there are people who do not feel that way. And so I think that leads to a larger conversation that perhaps needs to happen. I don't necessarily know that this is the podcast to do that. Um, but I think that's really a smaller concern than the fact that policy is what matters. I think when you know what is someone's track record, what is someone saying they're going to do, what is someone's agenda when they get in the White House, all of the things that they were asked, both parties were asked during the debate, that neither one of them really answered. Those are the things that we should be concerned with. And so those are the things that I think we should focus on, not, well, I heard her dad was white, and I heard that, she's Indian.
And that's why I'm saying, like, you could have just said, I don't know a lot, haven't been keeping up with it,
Yeah.
so I'm not gonna say anything. To me, she sounds more just for conversation's sake. To me, she sounds more like an undecided voter than
Hmm.
someone who leans more to one side or the other. In this context. Now, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that she doesn't have ties to anyone or anything like that. I'm not, and I'm not. I'm also not asserting that I know what her political views are. All I'm saying is, given that just that exchange alone, taking it for what it is, to me, she sounds more like an undecided voter, like saying
Right.
things like, I think either way it's going to be mayhem. She sounds like someone who doesn't really know how to vote, how she would want to vote, rather than
Today. Yeah.
someone today, yeah, rather than someone who is sure about, or rather than someone who is trying to push an agenda. It didn't sound to me, it sounded like ignorance, but it didn't sound to me like she was trying to further an agenda. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she's a lot smarter than I'm thinking. Um, because there's also that people are people are good at pretending, especially people with a whole lot of money.
Yep.
so, so I just feel like
And she's taking an acting class or two.
exactly. That's why I probably shouldn't have said it the way I said it. I probably should say, especially people who have acted, people who have,
I
um,
knew where you was going.
right. But I just, to me, I don't want to say that I think she's dumb. That's not, I don't think that's productive here, but I feel like she sounded like someone who's grossly uninformed. Um,
That's why
and
I said out of touch.
yeah, but sometimes people are informed and out of touch. She to me sounds like someone who truly doesn't, like, she probably could have sat this one out and it would have been fine. And that's fine because we don't all tap in. We are not all reading we're not all on MSNBC and CNN and all of the trades every day. We're just not all the same in that way. Um,
Right.
I'm not. I only know so much, and then that's it. I tap out at a certain point. There are people who are very, very, very involved and very, very interested in politics and have learned and have studied and have read and have, you know what I mean? She is not one of those people. That is clear. But I feel like
I
I'm more
got you.
informed than she is. I don't want to be whatever that is. Anyway, the point, the point is, um, she probably should have just shut up and left well enough alone. Um, given that sentiment, unless you had something else to say about Janet.
No, I was ready to pivot. I was just letting you finish your last statement because I was gonna say, speaking of pulling out, uh, we do have another political celebrity topic.
Love it when you
Hmm.
do it right there.
He
Swinging his
says he
phone.
will.
Oh,
He
sorry.
says he
No,
will
not.
not. He says he
Not
will
yet.
not be doing it right there.
So,
But let's give some context. So,
uh huh.
Chingy was supposed to be performing at a Republican event
Yeah.
called Red, White, and Rock. Yeah, which is interesting. Just in title, it sounds like why is Chingy there? But this is supposed to be quote unquote the nation's original and largest organization representing gay conservatives and allies. The event was supposed to feature Donald Trump Jr. and a plethora of other people. Chingy is on the flyer. The flyer went viral, and Chingy has decided to back out. Chingy says, um, I don't want to be stuck in the middle of this mess. And no, I'm not a Trump supporter nor supporter of anyone but Chingy. There you have it. And all of this started
Mm-hmm.
on September 20th, Friday, when Baller Alert posted about Chingy's appearance on the bill, and he jumped in the comments and responded to confused fans.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm gonna say this one time: my job is to perform and to get paid to perform, not core. Oh, not cur about politics. Now y'all find something else to do with your time.
Why?
So that
Why?
was the original. That was his original statement before he announced that he's not performing.
Like Chingy's biggest mistake is trying to continue to use their and cur and her and your. I think that's the biggest offense. But what do I know? Um, yeah, Chingy. Listen, sometimes you got to make a decision. Sometimes you got to think about the bigger picture. And maybe in this instance, Chingy felt it's not worth the stress. There will be other gigs, but this ain't the gig. Now, on the other side of it, sometimes you do things because you need the money.
That's true.
I believe that. And I believe that sometimes people will call it selling your soul often, but
Yes,
but sometimes I think that people simply do things as a means to survive. Um I try not to judge people too much for that because if you know what it's like to truly struggle or truly like need be in need, then we don't always know what's going on behind the scenes with people is what I'm trying to
I
say.
yeah, I think
And
I think most of the time we don't.
right. It's rare that you will get a full picture into someone's life. Um and sometimes people make decisions for many reasons. And sometimes one of those reasons is, well, there's not a lot of money coming in. I'm going to take this gig or I'm going to do this job or whatever it is because I need to or because it's going to put me in a better position to do other things.
Right.
And sometimes that's the reason people do it. This is, I would like to believe that, you know, when people make decisions to do things that those are some of the things that guide them when they make choices that maybe people don't agree with. But I also think that it is an artist's prerogative, and people may not like that I'm going to say this, but I do think it is an artist's prerogative to take the jobs they want to take. But they also have to know at the same time that if I take this job and I have liberal fans, there may be backlash.
Right.
I think two things can be true at the same time. So I'm not sitting here in judgment of Chingy, of Janet, or whoever. We've seen this happen with Chrisette Michelle. People stop fucking with Chrisette Michelle pretty bad. They got at her pretty bad when she performed at the inauguration. And I
Right.
listened to an interview of her talking about it a couple years ago, and she was like, "Listen, I had no idea." And she was like, "We kept driving the price up, and basically saying, listen, if you want me, a black woman, to perform, you gotta pay me something crazy." And they said yes. I mean, at that time, they probably needed black artists to, so it was easy for them to pay that money. But imagine somebody making you an offer you can't refuse. I'm not saying that is the most correct thing to do, but
Hmm.
as someone who has worked for entertainment companies, media companies, sometimes you don't agree with the content that the company may be associated with or the company may create, but that's the place you get your paycheck from. If I got upset every time I noticed something that I didn't agree with, politically or otherwise, I might not have a job, whether it's here, there, or wherever, you know? I don't know. It's a sticky situation, but I commend Chingy for deciding that he just don't want to be involved with it. That's hard to do when money's on the table. That's it. That's my little spiel.
I think your 9 to 5 is very different than an artist choosing to perform somewhere. Yes, it is an artist's job to perform and make money. Yes. But I think it's a different conversation than the person with a 9 to 5 because the person with the 9 to 5 has um, less power in deciding what happens there. And so as an artist, you have more of a choice very often, not all the time, just saying more often you have more choosing power than the person in the 9 to 5 who got to do what the company is doing,
Right.
or has to be at an event that you're paid to be at. Because this is not a singular contracted gig as a 9 to 5. This is your regular way of making a living. So I wanted to respond to that first. The
That's good.
second thing is, thanks. The second thing is, I think that today, um, what's being highlighted more than ever, possibly, is performing at a political rally, performing at a political convention is viewed by the public
Yeah.
as an endorsement.
Yes.
So if I perform at the such and such rally, people are going to look at that visually and say, oh, this is JD saying he is down with this politician. He is down with their rhetoric. He is down with their cause. And so I think today that's being highlighted and magnified, possibly more than ever, because of social media and the fact that we know things at such a rapid rate. Before, it had to be on television and you had to have tuned in to the television, and the television might not have covered all the performances. Maybe they covered one or two of the quote unquote bigger acts, and that's it. And then you would just hear rumblings of, oh, well, apparently so and so was also there performing. Today, we are seeing everything in real time, in 4K, in HD. I mean, it's a little bit different. And so I think that that's one of the things that some of these artists are kind of not understanding until shit hits the fan.
Right.
Because Chingy was paid to do this gig or signed a contract to do this gig, whatever it is. Chingy is on the flyer. It's clear that Chingy was going to do this job until it went viral, until there was backlash, and then he decided otherwise. Now, I understand that he needs to make a living. I understand Chingy is not very active, and so perhaps this was a big bag. Perhaps this was going to be a nice check, and that would be a great thing for Chingy. But because of the fact that this is viewed as an endorsement, you got to be careful with how you do these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's all I really have to say. I don't really have an opinion on Chingy doing it or not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you feel that performing at the LGBTQ Republican convention or rally, whatever this is being labeled as, if you feel like that's a good fit for you and you're okay with dealing with what's going to come afterwards, then do what you feel you need to do. Because yeah, bills have to get paid and you got to do what you have to do. But you have to understand what the byproducts of you performing are, what the consequences of you performing are, because you're going to perform, you're going to get paid, but then there will be backlash from the internet, from your friends, from your fans, i.e. Chrisette Michele was a great example. So if you're okay with that, then more power to you, you know? But it is viewed as a cosign, it is viewed as an endorsement, and so there will be things that come with performing on any stage, whether that's Democrat, Republican, Independent, it doesn't matter. And so that's just something I think that more celebs need to think about because it seems like they're down until the public outcry happens. This is not the first time we've seen something like this, and I don't think it'll be the last time we see something like this. Um, and so I
Some
think this
people,
they just have to consider those things.
yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I mean, some people even think that um, Lil Wayne, who I know we've talked about a lot lately, but some people even feel like one of the reasons that people kind of have distanced themselves from him is his political views. I wonder though, should it matter?
Should what matter?
Do you does it well, or rather I should say, and this is, you don't have to share your political views. I'm not going to share mine. I mean, I think people can probably guess from previous conversations we've had. But I guess my question is, does it bother you when artists do this? Does it make you look at them differently when they maybe book a gig with a certain party or a certain candidate, or when they um endorse a candidate, or does it make you look at artists differently?
I think it depends on one, what are the policies of this campaign?
Mm-hmm.
Two, what is the artist doing? Right? If you just say, hey, I'm performing and you don't say anything, that's very different than you going around and campaigning for the person, which we have seen people do before.
Yeah.
And so I think it depends on the campaign, the celeb, the way the celeb is doing things, what the celeb is doing, how they're being used by the party, all of that matters to in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think people have forgotten something very basic in this country. When I was growing up, there were three things we didn't talk about. And today that's like the opposite. It used to be you don't talk about sex, money, and politics.
Now that's all we
And
talk about.
now it's all we talk about is sex, money, and politics. And so
That's
I
true.
think that's really interesting. I think you could do whatever you want to do as a celebrity. You're using your power as a celebrity to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
I think very often that, like I said, people just forget about what happens afterwards. And so, yeah, let's go to the Obama campaign. Jay-Z and Beyonce were waving the Obama flag everywhere. They were damn near campaigning for the Obama administration.
Mm-hmm.
When the Obamas, when Barack Obama got elected,
Hmm.
people were upset with Jay-Z and Beyonce anytime Barack Obama did something they didn't like. And so they would go to Jay-Z and Beyonce and put a camera and a mic in their face and be like, well, what do you think about what they did? What do you think? Tell us why your friend and president did this.
Yeah.
And so that's going to happen because you were pretty much campaigning for them.
Yeah.
We saw you all over the place with them and telling people to vote for them and raising money and all of these things and high-fiving at the parties, everything. And so you said this was your president. And so you have become so embedded in that administration, in that campaign, and that's the way the public is viewing it. Now, obviously, Jay-Z and Beyonce were not on the administration of the Obamas. They didn't work with the Obamas once they were in the White House, right? Beyonce and Jay-Z wasn't in the West Wing, but that's how the public viewed it. And so when Obama did something that people thought was questionable, that people didn't like, they ran right to Beyonce and Jay-Z and was like, "Hey, what's going on with your guy?"
Yeah.
And so, I think that all of those things play a role, in my opinion, when you're a celebrity who does that. I performed many years ago. I'm a nobody, but I performed many years ago at one political event because I supported the person who was running. And I knew what would happen when I did that. I knew people would say, "Oh, so you rolling with this dude?" Yeah, yes, I am. Yes. But I wouldn't just do that without considering what would happen.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it comes down to. As a fan, everybody got to decide for themselves. I'm not going to sit here on this platform and say what you should do as a fan if the person you're a fan of is tied to a political party. Number one, people flip flop all the time. Number two, there are many people doing things for a check and not caring about anything else. Number three, it's up to them as a person too. If that person feels this is worth the money, this is worth the time, this is how I feel, then that's up to them.
I agree with that. I actually thought when you said that, um long ago, when you started talking about long ago, I thought what you were going to say was that long ago you could be openly affiliated with wherever you aligned yourself, and it wouldn't cause outrage in the same way that it does today. And I think our unfortunate reality, and again, I have my views and I don't agree with a lot of things that might be out there, that people's ideologies that are out there, but absent of even my views, just thinking about the fact that I feel like we once lived in a time where be you could uh be a part of one particular party or another, or you could decide that you didn't want to be a part of any. Maybe you were independent, or maybe you thought this way, or maybe you thought that way. I think we at some point lived in a time where it didn't invoke so much outrage, and because of, I believe, as a result of previous administrations that we've lived through, people no longer can just do that. It's so much more complicated today than that. And I
Hmm.
think that's a big thing that's changed in just the landscape, um, of all of it, is that you can't really just be like, well, this is what it is and that's it. There's a lot there's a lot of weight attached to whatever it is you believe and whatever it is you decide. It's like we've gone on a weird roller coaster where at some point I think people were upset. At some point you could say you were this or that. And then we got to a point where people then felt like, oh, you should be able to be more vocal. People started being more vocal, but then we lived through certain things, and now we're in a place where it's like, if you're vocal, you're dangerous, or you're this, or you're that. So I don't know what the solution is, right? I don't I don't know that there is one, but I do think that that's part of this. I think the part of it is that now there's so much attached to it. There's so much weight attached to it. There's so much responsibility attached to it that the moment you even remotely align yourself with something or someone, that's it. Um, and we talk about that with even with music now, where it's like if you say you don't like a song, people think it means you don't like an artist.
Right.
Um, so I don't know. I don't know how we move away from that. I think that's a few administrations away. Like I feel like we almost have to have some political palate cleansers in between some of the stuff that we've dealt with just as a country before we could even get to that. But that's a conversation for another day.
I
I just
think
want to
that's
say that.
also I think that's also just tied to the outrage culture of today.
Yeah,
Today everything is
right.
what? Everything is clutch pearls, everything is jaw drop, everything is big gasp reactions, when a lot
Right.
of it is not that serious. Like,
Agree. But I also think that there was a generation that came after ours that was like, oh well, we need the space to be more honest and to be more vocal. And then we got to the point where people could be more honest and more vocal. And then that turned into, like you said, the outrage. Like
yeah,
we're now in the stage of outrage culture where now it's like, you better not, because if you do,
right.
you know, or you better, because if you don't. So I don't know. I don't know where that leaves us.
Hmm.
I know for me and you that tomorrow we'll be right back to our usual programming. But
That's right.
just really wanted to talk about this because I feel like a lot of celebrities lately have kind of been stepping in it and and there's a way to talk about things kind of like how we talked about things today. There's a way of talking about things without completely putting yourself into it. Sometimes you don't
It's
need
called
to.
objectivity.
Right. So I don't know. I just first of all, Janet, that was some basic shit that Janet could have. Anyway, whatever.
Hey, now you're not being objective.
Sorry.
That's fine. I'm messing with you.
All right,
All
that's
right, ladies and gentlemen, that's our pod. We will see you tomorrow.
bye.